Hi everybody and welcome to today's Art of Procurement. I'm your host, Philip Heidson. So you've just been appointed to a new CPO position. Your executive leadership team is looking at you to make an immediate impact while setting up procurement as a driver of sustainable long-term value. Your first 100 days, they can make or break your career. But where do you start? Today is day 4 of our special 5-part series, and it's brought to you in partnership with Efficio, the world's largest procurement consultancy firm. This series provides you with the roadmap you need to hit the ground running. And in this episode, I spoke with Peter Wetherill to discuss where to start in using new technology to enable your new procurement value proposition. Pete is a principal at Efficio. He leads their digital practice, which includes supporting client strategies and developing the proprietary eFlow platform. I started in this conversation by asking Pete, why should a CPO care about technology during the early stages, the first 100 days, of their new role?
So I think there's 2 reasons why a CPO should care about the topic of technology. I think one, despite the hype, there is an incredible amount of opportunity that technology brings. I would put the challenge out there, especially for a smaller organization, that you could make a massive impact on a function and effectiveness on using just open source technology, not even paying a license fee. So I think there's a massive opportunity there. And I think the second piece why CPO should consider it, and they should consider it early, is that there's been a phenomenal amount of money. That the statistics around the amount of wastage on failed IT projects is horrendous. Really, it's 800 billion, I think, was wasted globally on IT failed projects last year, and in procurement especially. The study we did last year, we actually highlighted a surprisingly high percentage, so nearly half of the people that responded. These were all leaders within the procurement function, admitted to buying a piece of technology through no other reason than fear of missing out, FOMO.
Yeah.
So what they're effectively saying is, either through marketing material or through pressure to act, they've bought a gadget hoping it's going to solve a problem. And, we really need to get back to basics here and think of technology as one aspect of the system. A system contains many things. It contains people. It contains systems, technology traditionally called systems. It includes content. And those things need to solve a problem. And it takes a while to understand, right, what are the best problems to solve and where can I add the most value? So it's something we should be considering all the time.
And so it's something that you would recommend, taking a step back and kind of figuring out why you need the technology versus, you mentioned there a lot of CPOs kind of openly admitting that they're buying it because they just feel like they need to have some kind of technology to say that they're investing in tech. Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's 2 things that all CPOs should do. They should understand what they want to grow their function into, what their end game is. And one aspect of that, one dimension is technology. Another is people, and there are various other things that you could pull into there as well. So technology shouldn't be dismissed, that should be considered as part of that. The second thing is they should understand the art of the possible.
Yeah.
Beyond the realms of procurement, technology is significantly disrupting whole sectors. And the opportunity with it, as I say, despite the hype, is still substantial. So understanding how you could take something that's market leading elsewhere and adapt it into procurement can put you ahead. So I think it should be considered in that context.
So when you look at the challenges that a new CPO faces in realizing the benefits of technology, what are some of the common themes that emerge?
So I think in its most simplistic terms, technology can do one of 2 things. It can either automate a repeatable process, and undoubtedly we have many of them in procurement. So there is an opportunity there to save some money, get some efficiencies, redeploy people to more value-add tasks. The maximum benefit there, of course, is always going to be the amount of people that are doing that process today. And I think that can also extend to pushing activities out of procurement, whether it's into the supply chain or into the business, and making them a lot slicker. I think the more transformational thing that technology can do and the impact it can make is around helping people make better decisions. And I think technology can be used as a channel to better communicate, to better extract data and analyze it and provide insight. And that can enable someone that doesn't necessarily have 40 years experience of a category or doesn't necessarily have the full context of the situation to still make very rapid, decisive decisions that are more effective. And technology can enable that.
Now, would you say that, when you look at procurement teams and a CPO who's trying to implement new technology, how important is the literacy, like the technological literacy of the procurement team in really being able to realize the benefits of that investment?
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy sometimes that the people empowered to make substantial financial decisions, not just the cost of technology, but the opportunity cost that's presented with having the chance to redefine how we work, how we run processes. Yet people are making that without necessarily understanding the terms they're using, without understanding the fundamentals of how software is put together, the architecture. I struggle to comprehend how you could be satisfied with making a decision without having some sort of literacy in that space. And I think more and more it's critical that we're able to have leaders in procurement that understand these things, that they understand how to challenge vendors appropriately and understand how to think differently. Yeah. And in many cases where I've seen people go out to procure a piece of technology, my solution to that problem would be to recruit a person. If I'm looking at a piece of technology and looking and dismissing it because of its reporting capability, why would I not look to get a person who can make the most out of the data that's in there, who can help build integrations? So I struggle to see, other than luck, how you can make the right decisions without having that basic understanding of the concepts.
So the context of this series is thinking about a CPO who's new in position. They're in their first 100 days and they're looking at the technology landscape. Now, the first question, kind of with that said, that I would love to know is a CPO steps into an organization where there really isn't any technology that's in use, or very kind of basic technology. What would you recommend they do to actually make a start in digitizing the procurement function?
So I think first and foremost, you need to understand where your business problems lie, what type of culture your organization has, and what the expectation of procurement is within that function. Are you expected to go and grind out the last drop of savings from every corner?
Yeah.
Are you expected to collaborate more with your selected third parties and get more innovation and help to top line growth? What is actually expected of you? And then I think from that, the phrase that's coined often is brilliant at the basics. And I think that for many, many people is absolutely true. Get a firm grip of where you're spending money. So whether that's a combination of spend analytics, contract management, whatever it may be, but get control of what is going out the door today. And then, as I say, I would be pragmatic around having a big vision. So having a vision for where you want to get to in 5-6 years time. And again, it can't be technology exclusive. It has to be about where do you want your function to be. And then make a series of incremental steps towards that. And I think as much you can make an impact by recruiting a person with a different set of skills as you can by buying a license to a piece of technology. And if you do have anything that's there today, are you using it to its maximum potential? As I say, in all of the systems that we have in procurement, technology is one element. And often technology is blamed as the cause for things not supposedly working. And it could be down to configuration. It could be down to a lack of content within that system. Or it could be down to how humans are interacting with that technology.
Yeah, it's funny how technology is either the silver bullet that's going to solve all of our problems, or if it's in place, it's the reason why we can't do what we want to do. Either way is not necessarily the truth, because, as you say, it's so interconnected with all the different elements of people, process, and the technology.
Yeah, and I think, whenever you introduce a piece of technology, and I'm sure this will change in the future, but in procurement, very, very little of the technology that we have completely replaces a human being. It's required to work with it, in synergy, ideally, with that human. Now, that rarely happens. There's probably a couple of reasons for that. I would say, firstly, we forget to go and research and understand what are actual, what are the capabilities of our people, what motivates them, what are they looking for. But the second point is it's probably easier in our minds to adapt a piece of technology than adapt how a person works. And so we go after that thing, and we see that as the easier option. But seldom in the long term is that the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's almost like we can just toggle an on-off switch on a piece of technology, and we can't do that with a human. And that's the assumption.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, sometimes we also forget why we're doing certain things. I've been in many conversations with clients that, a technology requirement can't be explained. It's just, that's how we work. That's what we need to do. And it's, you've seen these many articles in LinkedIn that are fascinating around, why US railroad gauge lengths are what they are because of the Romans. And things just roll over and roll over and roll over. And to an extent, we're in that situation in procurement where we've forgotten the purpose of some of the processes that we run. But they're essential. We have to have them, and we're going to spend a lot of money, bending technology to fit that shape. And maybe it's all a waste of time.
Well, I asked about, a new CPO in role who looks at a technology landscape that is pretty barren. Where do they start? On the flip side, a new CPO who comes in and there's already some kind of technology infrastructure. What are some of the flags to look for to know whether that technology is fit for purpose?
So, again, I think it all starts with defining what are your business problems, what's your culture, where do you want to get to? I think when you're looking at issues in a current state of technology, one of the common themes that I see is, one, it lacks content. Therefore, it's not helpful. I don't use Ariba because it doesn't speed me up. I don't find it useful. But if Ariba or any other alternative, was to be full of content, it was to have templates ready to go. It was to have, suppliers that are relevant for that category available to select. It had notes of how we did this last time and what we learned. Suddenly that becomes a lot more powerful. No one logs into Airbnb or Uber or Spotify because they like the technology. They like the content they can get out of it. And I think that doesn't mean we need to go and radically spend loads of money on new different fancy systems. It's just maybe we need to pivot our effort less towards over configuration and more towards let's fill this thing up with helpful content. Get it over a threshold where then people will interact and they'll use it and they'll update it.
Now, the final question that I have today on the topic of technology is, when we talk about technology, you mentioned it earlier about automation and whether that does some of the procurement roles. I think when you think outside of procurement and somebody sees you investing in procurement tech, they may automatically think, hey, that means that I need less people in procurement. It's a direct correlation between here's some technology and here's my people budget. I mean, is that really the reality, do you see, as procurement teams are implementing more technology? Does that mean that we're going to have a reduced headcount? Or is that just opening up the time that the people that we do have to do more interesting and strategic things?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting and complex question. In the short term, I don't think it gets rid of people. I think, there are a lot of interesting debates and conversations going across many channels at the moment about what does the future procurement look like? What does the organization look like? Does procurement even exist in its current configuration, or is it something wildly different? I think whichever way you look at it, there's a massive opportunity in procurement. It sits at the threshold between the business and its third parties, and there's a lot of information and data that goes through back and forth with that. So I think procurement and what we know as procurement today has a massive opportunity to grow into something substantially more value adding. Technology can be an enabler for that. I think in terms of how quickly the size of a procurement team changes, and I really do think it will go one of two ways. It will get a lot smaller, it will get a lot bigger, depending on where you draw the boundary. I think it comes down to whether we're going to go through an evolution to the new world of procurement or a revolution. And what I mean by that is, are we going to incrementally try and digitalize aspects of how we work today and make it more automated and self-service and etc. Or are we going to look to actually go for a complete revolution and say, forget everything we know about procurement today. we need to sit as an entity in the business which understands what our third parties are doing, how much we're spending on them, how we're performing. It understands, almost from an investor mindset perspective. So less looking to get compliance and to screen suppliers coming into our business, and more, which third parties are going to give us the competitive edge over the next 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And almost thinking like private equity investors might, where do we see potential in the supply chain? And if procurement starts to perform that role, it becomes significantly more value contributing. And then I think, it almost probably devolves into its constituent parts. So you have people that are, really strategic, thinking about the next step for the entire business. And then you have very analytical people.
Yeah.
And this is the assumption the operational stuff all becomes automated.
Hi there. I want to thank you for listening into today's podcast as part of our series that helps you take the actions that you need in your first 100 days to position procurement for long-term success. If you'd like to get more insight into how to approach your first 100 days, or to reference all the tips that are covered in this series, Efficio has created a handy downloadable checklist. It's really easy to grab your copy of this checklist. All you need to do is go to artofprocurement.com/100 days. That's artofprocurement.com/100 days.